The world had ended years ago. The cities, once teeming with life, were now empty graveyards filled with crumbling buildings and streets littered with the bones of the past. The wind howled through broken windows, carrying the distant echoes of a civilization long gone. In the middle of this desolation, a lone figure moved cautiously through the ruins. His name was Ethan Carter, and as far as he knew, he was the last survivor. Dressed in a tattered jacket, with a backpack full of scavenged supplies and a rusted machete strapped to his side, Ethan had learned to live with silence. It had been years since he last heard another human voice. At first, the solitude had been unbearable. Now, it was just another part of life. He moved carefully through the wreckage of an old convenience store. Shelves had been emptied long ago, but sometimes, if he was lucky, something useful remained, maybe a forgotten can of food, a half-empty water bottle, or even an old lighter. Ethan's boots crunched against shattered glass as he picked his way toward the counter. His breath caught when he heard a faint noise behind him, a soft rustling sound. He spun around, his machete already in his hand, but there was nothing. Just the wind. Or was it? The problem with the dead wasn't just that they never stopped hunting. It was that they never made mistakes. If you heard one, it was already too late. Ethan moved quickly now, his instincts screaming at him to get out. The last thing he wanted was to be cornered inside a building. He had seen it happen to others before, their screams swallowed by the sound of tearing flesh. As he stepped outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the ruined city. Night was dangerous. The dead grew more active in the dark. It was best to find shelter before the real nightmares began. He moved swiftly through the streets, past rusted cars and decayed corpses. A flicker of movement caught his eye near an abandoned pharmacy. He froze, gripping his machete tightly. His heart pounded as he scanned the area. A zombie. It stood near the entrance, swaying slightly, its milky white eyes unfocused. Its mouth hung open, revealing blackened teeth. Blood was dried in streaks across its rotting skin. Ethan had seen thousands like it before. He had killed more than he could count. This one wasn't a threat, not yet. It hadn't sensed him. He knew better than to engage unless necessary. Instead, he slipped into a nearby alley, keeping to the shadows. He made his way toward an old apartment complex. The building had held up well over the years. The doors were still intact, and the windows were boarded up, likely by past survivors. If they were still inside, they were either long dead or worse. Pushing through the front door, Ethan was greeted by the familiar scent of decay. His flashlight flickered as he scanned the dusty furniture and abandoned belongings. It was always unsettling, walking into someone else's last moments. Clothes were still hanging in an open wardrobe. A child's toy sat on a shelf, untouched for years. He secured the door behind him, setting up a makeshift barricade. He had learned to sleep lightly, always ready to run if needed. As he sat in the corner of the room, his thoughts drifted back to the past, to the time before the world fell apart. He could still remember the laughter of his younger sister, Lena, the way she used to tug on his sleeve whenever she needed help. He had promised to protect her. But promises didn't mean anything anymore. The silence was overwhelming. Outside, the wind howled, carrying the distant groans of the undead. Ethan let out a slow breath, gripping the locket around his neck, a small silver piece that held a photo of Lena. Was he truly the last one left? Or was there still someone out there, surviving just like him? As he closed his eyes, exhaustion taking over, a single thought echoed in his mind. If there's still a chance. I have to find them. Tomorrow, he would set out again. Tomorrow, he would search for answers. And if the world had nothing left for him, then he would carve his own path through the ruins of the past. The nightmare never truly ended. It just replayed in his mind every time he closed his eyes. Ethan jolted awake, heart pounding, the echoes of a distant scream still ringing in his ears. It had been a dream, one of the many that haunted him. But this one felt too real. The smell of burning flesh, the sound of sirens, the look of terror in Lena's eyes. He rubbed his face, trying to shake the memories. But the past was a wound that never healed. Years ago, the day everything fell apart. The city had been alive with its usual chaos. People hurried to work, horns blared in traffic, and the sky was still a perfect blue. But beneath it all, something was wrong. The first signs were subtle. A news report about violent outbreaks in another country. A video of a man attacking paramedics before being shot down. People dismissed it as another random tragedy, until it spread. Ethan had been at home with Lena when it reached their city. He had just come back from college, exhausted, flipping through channels when the emergency alert interrupted. The warning was vague, something about a viral outbreak, urging people to stay inside. But by then, it was too late. A distant explosion shook their apartment. When Ethan ran to the window, he saw it. The streets were in chaos. Cars crashed into each other, people ran in terror, and then he saw them. The infected. They moved fast, some sprinting with unnatural speed, others shambling forward in eerie silence. Their eyes were blank, their movements jerky and unpredictable. They attacked without reason, ripping into anyone nearby. Ethan turned away, panic rising. "Lena," he shouted, rushing to his sister's room. She was standing there, eyes wide, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Ethan, what's happening?" "We have to go," he said, grabbing a backpack and stuffing it with whatever supplies he could find. Then the screaming started, louder, closer. Someone banged on their apartment door. "Help! Please!" Ethan hesitated. The voice was desperate, terrified. He reached for the door handle. Then, a guttural snarl. A sickening crunch. The screaming stopped. Lena whimpered, backing away. Ethan knew they couldn't stay. He took her hand and led her toward the fire escape. The hallway was eerily silent. As they moved, he caught a glimpse of their neighbor's door. It was open, a bloody handprint smeared across the wood. "Don't look. Just keep moving." They made it outside, running down the emergency stairs. Below, the streets were a battlefield. People were being torn apart, devoured. A woman tripped, screaming as an infected lunged at her, tearing into her neck. Lena buried her face in Ethan's shirt. "I don't want to be here," she sobbed. "I know," he whispered. "We'll find a way out." They ran, dodging through panicked crowds. Gunfire erupted nearby as the police tried to contain the outbreak, but it was no use. Then, the military arrived. Tanks rolled in, soldiers shouting for people to stay inside. But soon, the streets became a killing ground. It didn't matter if you were infected or not, anyone who got too close was gunned down. Ethan pulled Lena into an alley, heart racing. The city was collapsing. No safe zones. No escape. And then came the bombings. Explosions rocked the city, fire consuming everything in its path. It was the government's last attempt to stop the infection. But all it did was turn a disaster into a massacre. Ethan held Lena close as they hid, watching their world burn. Present day. Ethan sat in the darkness, gripping the locket around his neck. It held the last picture of Lena. She hadn't made it. He had tried. He had fought. But in the end, the infected took her, just like they took everything else. His stomach twisted with grief, the same grief he had buried under years of survival. But now, in the silence of the abandoned apartment, it came rushing back. He exhaled sharply, standing up. The past was gone. The world he knew no longer existed. All that remained was survival. But deep inside, something still burned. If there was anyone left out there, if there was even a chance that he wasn't truly the last survivor, he had to find out. Tomorrow, he would head toward the outskirts. He had heard rumors long ago of a hidden settlement beyond the ruins. Maybe it was a lie. Maybe it was a graveyard. But he had to try. Because the echoes of the dead weren't enough to keep him going anymore. It was time to find the living. Morning came with an eerie silence. Ethan packed his supplies, slipping his machete into its sheath and checking his revolver, only 3 bullets left. Not nearly enough. He stepped outside, keeping low as he moved through the deserted streets. The city was a graveyard, skyscrapers standing like rotting skeletons, their windows shattered, their insides hollowed out. Rusted cars sat abandoned, their doors left open in a frozen moment of panic from years ago. The infected weren't as common in this part of the ruins, but that didn't mean it was safe. There were other dangers. And something felt off. Ethan's instincts had kept him alive this long, and right now, they were screaming at him. Something was watching him. He quickened his pace, staying close to the crumbling walls of an old department store. Every few steps, he glanced over his shoulder, but he saw nothing. Only shadows. Maybe I'm just paranoid. Then he heard it. A faint shuffle, too soft for a regular infected. They were clumsy, stumbling, their movements unnatural. This was different. Calculated. Ethan ducked behind a rusted SUV, holding his breath. He gripped his machete, every muscle in his body tense. Slowly, he peeked around the corner. Nothing. The street was empty. The wind howled through the ruins, stirring bits of paper and dust. And then, a flicker of movement in the alley ahead. His grip tightened on his weapon. He had two choices, turn back or move forward. But there was no safety behind him. Only ghosts of the past. Taking a slow breath, Ethan moved forward. Step by step. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. As he reached the mouth of the alley, he felt it before he saw it, something was there. A blur of motion. A whisper of movement. Then a low growl, so close it sent ice through his veins. Ethan spun, swinging his machete blindly. It connected, but not deep enough. A snarl erupted as the thing leaped back, landing silently. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't a normal infected. It crouched low, its body lean and twisted, its skin stretched tight over its bones. Its eyes weren't cloudy like the others, it was looking right at him, intelligence burning behind its sunken sockets. Its mouth curled into something almost like a grin, revealing jagged, yellowed teeth. A hunter. Ethan had heard of them, rumors whispered by other survivors before they all disappeared. Some believed the infection had evolved, creating faster, smarter versions of the undead. Others said the military had experimented on prisoners, trying to create a weapon, only to unleash something far worse. But one thing was certain, these things were killers. And now, he was its prey. The hunter lunged. Ethan barely dodged, rolling across the cracked pavement as claws scraped the concrete where he had been standing. He scrambled to his feet, raising his machete, but the thing was already moving, darting between abandoned cars, circling him. It was playing with him. Panic clawed at Ethan's chest. He had fought off hordes of slow, mindless infected before. But this? This was something else. He needed an escape. His eyes darted to a nearby fire escape, a metal ladder hanging from the side of a crumbling building. If he could reach it. The hunter lunged again. Ethan dodged, barely avoiding its claws. He sprinted toward the ladder, adrenaline fueling his movements. But the hunter was fast. Too fast. It slammed into him, sending him crashing into the pavement. His head spun, pain flaring in his ribs. The hunter loomed over him, its hollow eyes locked onto his. It let out a clicking sound, tilting its head, as if savoring the moment before the kill. Ethan's fingers found his revolver. With a roar, he yanked it from his holster and fired. The bullet struck the hunter's shoulder, sending it stumbling back with a screech. Ethan didn't hesitate. He scrambled to his feet and bolted toward the fire escape, leaping onto the ladder and hauling himself up. Below, the hunter snarled, shaking off the wound as if it were nothing. It paced beneath him, those hollow eyes never leaving his. Then, it did something Ethan hadn't expected. It grinned. And then, it climbed. Ethan's stomach dropped. The infected weren't supposed to be able to do that. But the hunter scaled the wall with ease, its fingers gripping the metal rungs like a spider. Ethan climbed faster, reaching the rooftop just as the creature was halfway up. He stumbled forward, scanning the rooftop for anything that could help. His eyes landed on a rusted metal pipe sticking out of the rooftop, barely secured to the concrete. An idea sparked. As the hunter reached the top, Ethan rushed forward and kicked the pipe with everything he had. It groaned, metal bending. And then it snapped. The pipe came loose, crashing down, smashing into the hunter's face as it tried to climb onto the rooftop. The creature shrieked as it fell, crashing onto the pavement below with a sickening crunch. Ethan didn't wait to check if it was dead. He staggered back, breathing heavily. His hands shook, adrenaline still pumping through his veins. That thing had been hunting him. Stalking him. And worst of all, it hadn't been alone. As he looked out over the ruined city, movement caught his eye. In the distance, shadows flickered between the buildings. More hunters. They were out there. And they were coming. Ethan crouched low on the rooftop, his breath steadying as he watched the distant shadows shift between the ruins. The hunter had been terrifying enough, but the sight of more moving in the distance sent a deeper chill through his body. They weren't mindless. They were hunting. And now, they knew he was here. He couldn't stay in the city. He needed to move, now. Glancing around, Ethan spotted a rooftop path leading toward a collapsed section of the street. If he could get to the other side without being seen, he might gain some distance before the creatures found him. As he took his first step, something unexpected crackled through the air. A voice. Faint. Distant. Hello? If anyone can hear this, please, we're alive. Ethan froze. His heart pounded in his chest. A radio signal. He hadn't heard another human voice in years. The voice continued, static breaking between the words. We're in. Static, safe zone. Static, need help, if you're out there, please. Then silence. Ethan's hands tightened into fists. His mind raced. It could be real. Survivors. A safe place. Or it could be a trap. He had heard stories before. Bandits, scavengers, people who lured survivors and only to kill them for supplies. If he walked into an ambush, he might never walk out. But what choice did he have? I can't stay here. Decision made, Ethan moved. He sprinted across the rooftop, leaping over a gap between buildings. His feet hit the next ledge, rolling to absorb the impact. Below, the streets remained eerily silent. No sign of the hunters. Yet. 1 hour later. Ethan reached the outskirts of the city as the sun began to set. The ruins here were different, less collapsed buildings, more open fields overtaken by nature. Trees had begun to reclaim the land, vines twisting around abandoned cars, grass pushing through cracked roads. He moved cautiously, following the broken highway. His radio was useless, he had no way of responding to the transmission. Where had it come from? His best bet was to find a high point. If there were people out here, they'd be hiding in a defensible location. A watchtower, a fortified house, or even an old military base. As he moved, a faint smell hit him, smoke. Someone had made a fire recently. Ethan's grip tightened on his machete as he followed the scent. He crept through the trees, careful to keep his footsteps light. Then, in the distance, a structure. It was an old gas station, mostly intact. Metal sheets covered the windows, and barbed wire surrounded the perimeter. Someone had fortified it. And there was light inside. Someone was alive. Ethan's pulse quickened. He stayed low, observing. No movement outside. No guards. Too quiet. If this was a settlement, why weren't there lookouts? His instincts screamed trap. But he had come too far to turn back. Carefully, he approached, moving along the side of the gas station. The door was slightly open, just enough to let someone in. He hesitated. Then, taking a slow breath, he stepped inside. Inside the gas station. The air was thick with the scent of burnt wood and something else, something rotten. Ethan's fingers tightened on his weapon as he moved through the dimly lit space. Shelves were overturned, supplies scattered. Someone had been here recently. Then, he saw it. Blood. Not fresh, but not old either. Smears along the floor, drag marks leading toward the back. His pulse pounded in his ears. Then, movement. A sound, barely audible. A breath? Ethan spun, raising his machete. And came face to face with a girl. She couldn't have been older than 20, her dark hair matted with dirt, her clothes torn. A pistol trembled in her grip, pointed directly at Ethan. Her wide, terrified eyes locked onto him. "Who are you?" she whispered. Ethan held up his hands, slowly lowering his machete. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't lower the gun. "Are you alone?" Ethan hesitated. "Yes." A flicker of emotion crossed her face. Relief? Fear? Then, from the back room, another voice, weak, strained. "Sarah." "Who is it?" The girl, Sarah, glanced over her shoulder. "It's someone. I don't know if we can trust him." Ethan took a step forward. "I heard the radio signal." "Was that you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "We were trying to reach anyone. We thought we were the only ones left." Ethan's stomach twisted. "How many of you were here?" Sarah swallowed. "Just 2 of us." "Who's in the back?" "My brother." Her voice wavered. "He's hurt." Ethan's jaw tightened. This was real. Not a trap. A wounded survivor meant they weren't going anywhere fast. Which meant they weren't alone in this place. Sarah's eyes darted to the door. "Did you?" Then, from outside, a sound. A low, guttural clicking. Ethan froze. Sarah paled. "They found us." The hunters had arrived. A low, guttural clicking echoed from outside. Ethan's blood ran cold. The hunters had found them. Sarah's grip on the pistol tightened. She exchanged a panicked glance with Ethan before whispering, "How many?" Ethan moved to the window, careful not to make a sound. He peeked through a crack in the boarded-up glass. 3. Dark silhouettes moved in the fading light, their lean, twisted forms barely visible against the ruins. Their movements were precise, calculated. One of them knelt, pressing a clawed hand against the dirt. Sniffing the air. Ethan's stomach twisted. "They're tracking us," he whispered. Sarah's face paled. She swallowed hard, her pistol shaking slightly. "Can they get in?" Ethan scanned the gas station. The fortifications were solid, but not built for this. The door was sturdy, but the windows, though boarded up, weren't reinforced well enough. The hunters would tear through them like paper. A weak, ragged cough came from the back room. Sarah flinched. "Jamie," she whispered, rushing inside. Ethan followed, his mind racing. Sarah's brother lay on a makeshift cot, a thin mattress shoved against the wall. His face was pale, drenched in sweat. His leg was wrapped in bloodied bandages. A bite. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Sarah knelt beside him, brushing his matted blonde hair from his face. "Jamie, stay with me," she whispered. His eyelids fluttered open, glassy and distant. "Sarah." His voice was barely audible. She forced a smile. "I'm here." Ethan's jaw clenched. Jamie wasn't going to make it. Even if they somehow escaped, the infection would take him. It was only a matter of time. And outside, the clicking grew louder. Sarah turned to Ethan, desperation in her eyes. "We have to get him out of here." Ethan hesitated. "Sarah, he's..." No, her voice cracked. "Don't say it." "I'm not leaving him." Ethan exhaled sharply. He had seen it before, people clinging to hope when there was none left. But this wasn't just about her brother. If they stayed, they were all dead. A sharp scraping noise cut through the silence. The hunters were testing the barriers. Ethan's mind raced. Fight? Flee? Then, an idea. He turned back to Sarah. How much gas is left in the station's tanks? Her brows furrowed. What? The underground tanks. Are they still full? Sarah blinked, then realization hit her. They should be. The pumps stopped working, but the storage tanks. Ethan's pulse quickened. It was risky. Insanely risky. But it was their only shot. Take Jamie and get ready to move, he said, pulling a metal flask from his backpack. He dumped the water inside, then knelt near the supply shelves, rummaging for anything flammable. He found an old rag, shoving it inside. Sarah's eyes widened. You're making a Molotov? Something bigger. Ethan grabbed a length of rubber tubing and moved toward the back door, where the old fuel lines led underground. He worked quickly, jamming the tube into a rusted valve and sucking hard. The sharp, acrid taste of gasoline filled his mouth before he spat it out, directing the flow into the flask. Outside, the scratching turned to pounding. Sarah held Jamie close, her face tight with fear. Hurry, she whispered. Ethan stuffed the rag into the gas-filled flask. His fingers trembled slightly as he pulled out his lighter. Then, a loud crash. One of the wooden boards near the front door snapped. A hunter's arm shot through the gap, its clawed fingers twisting, reaching. Sarah let out a strangled gasp. Jamie coughed weakly. The hunter froze. Then, its head snapped toward the sound. Ethan lit the rag. Run, he shouted, hurling the Molotov toward the floor near the fuel lines. The moment it hit, flames erupted. The fire spread fast, crawling along the cracked tiles, licking at the old wooden counters. Sarah grabbed Jamie, pulling him toward the back door. Ethan followed, heat searing his skin as flames roared behind them. The hunters let out inhuman screeches, scrambling away from the sudden inferno. One of them lunged toward the exit. Boom! The explosion ripped through the station, blasting the doors off their hinges. Ethan was thrown forward, hitting the ground hard. His ears rang. Smoke filled his lungs. But they were outside. Alive. Sarah coughed violently, dragging Jamie beside her. Ethan forced himself up, blinking through the smoke. The gas station was a fireball, thick black smoke billowing into the sky. The hunters, if they were still alive, were buried under the flames and rubble. Ethan didn't wait to find out. Come on, he gasped, grabbing Sarah's arm. We have to move. She didn't argue. Together, they stumbled into the darkness, leaving the burning station behind. The hunters were dead. But the real question remained, where would they go next? Smoke still clung to the night air as Ethan led Sarah and Jamie away from the burning wreckage of the gas station. His lungs ached with every breath, but he pushed forward. Sarah struggled to keep Jamie upright. His fever had worsened, his body limp as she half-carried him. How much farther, she panted. Ethan scanned the ruins ahead. The city had been dangerous, but the open roads were worse, too exposed. They needed cover, somewhere defensible. There's an old overpass a few miles east, he said. If we can make it there, we can regroup. Sarah nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. But Jamie let out a weak moan, his head lolling against her shoulder. He didn't have much time. They had to move. 2 hours later. The forest swallowed them as they left the highway behind, weaving through gnarled trees and overgrown paths. The distant glow of the burning gas station had faded, leaving only the sound of rustling leaves and their own ragged breathing. Ethan's grip on his machete never loosened. The hunters might be dead, but that didn't mean they were safe. Sarah tripped over a root, catching herself before she fell. Jamie groaned. We have to stop, she whispered. Just for a minute. Ethan hesitated, scanning the darkened woods. Stopping was a risk, but pushing forward might kill Jamie before they even found shelter. Fine, he muttered. 5 minutes. Sarah eased Jamie onto a moss-covered rock, brushing sweat from his forehead. His skin was burning up, his breathing shallow. Ethan crouched nearby, listening. Something didn't feel right. The air was too still. No insects. No wind. Just silence. Sarah wiped her eyes, trying to steady her voice. There has to be somewhere safe. A real safe zone. Ethan didn't respond. She looked at him, desperate. You don't believe it exists, do you? Ethan exhaled slowly. I don't know. He had heard the stories. Cities that had fortified themselves. Outposts that promised security. But every time he searched for them, he found graves instead. Sarah looked down at Jamie, her voice barely a whisper. Then what are we supposed to do? Ethan opened his mouth to answer. Snap. A branch broke in the distance. His body tensed. He grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her close. Don't move, he whispered. She stiffened. What? Then she heard it. A soft, shuffling sound. Slow. Rhythmic. Not a hunter. Something worse. Ethan motioned for Sarah to stay low as he crept toward the noise, machete raised. He peered through the trees, his heart hammering. At first, he saw nothing. Just darkness. Then, a figure. Standing completely still between the trees. It wasn't a hunter. It wasn't even moving. It just stood there. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. He tightened his grip on his weapon. Then, the figure took a single step forward. And another. A soft, wet moan escaped its lips. Ethan sucked in a sharp breath. It wasn't alone. Beyond the trees, dozens of figures emerged. They weren't fast. They weren't smart. But they never stopped coming. Sarah, Ethan whispered urgently. Get Jamie up. Now. She saw his face and didn't argue. She hauled her brother to his feet as Ethan backed away from the growing horde. Then, Jamie collapsed. Sarah barely caught him, panic flashing in her eyes. Jamie, please, you have to. The groaning grew louder. The dead had seen them. Ethan yanked Sarah up. We have to go. Now. She fought him. We can't leave him. Jamie's unfocused eyes met hers, and for a split second, clarity returned to his fevered face. Then he spoke, his voice barely audible. Go. Sarah's breath hitched. No. The first zombie stumbled closer. Then another. And another. Ethan grabbed Sarah and ran. She screamed, kicking at him, fighting to turn back. But Ethan didn't let go. The dead swarmed. Jamie's body was lost beneath them. Sarah's sobs tore through the night, but Ethan didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because nowhere was safe. Sarah's sobs were silent now. She hadn't spoken since Jamie was lost beneath the horde. She hadn't fought Ethan anymore, either. She just followed, empty and distant, as they moved deeper into the forest. Ethan understood grief. But grief in this world could get you killed. They needed shelter, soon. His muscles ached, exhaustion gnawed at him, and the cold night air pressed against his skin like an icy warning. Sarah tripped over a fallen branch. She didn't even try to catch herself. She just hit the ground, motionless. Ethan turned back, crouching beside her. Sarah, get up. She didn't move. Sarah. Why? Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. Why did you pull me away? Ethan clenched his jaw. You know why. She looked at him then, her eyes hollow. I could have saved him. Ethan sighed. He was already gone. Sarah let out a shaky breath. I should have been with him. Ethan grabbed her wrist, firm but not unkind. Then he would have had to watch you die, too. She flinched but didn't argue. A distant moan carried through the trees. They were still being followed. Ethan's grip tightened. We don't have time for this. Sarah hesitated, then finally nodded. She got up. They kept moving. 1 hour later, they found a place. An old church, half buried in ivy and forgotten by time. The large wooden doors were broken, but the walls still stood. Ethan stepped inside first, machete drawn. No movement. No sound. Safe, for now. Sarah collapsed onto one of the old pews, hugging herself. Ethan checked the doors, wedging debris against them to slow anything that tried to get inside. It wasn't much, but it was something. Sarah stared at the altar ahead, her voice hollow. Do you think there's still a God? Ethan exhaled. I don't know. She let out a bitter laugh. Me neither. Silence stretched between them. Ethan finally sat across from her, his body heavy with exhaustion. He needed sleep, just a few hours. But Sarah spoke again, softer this time. What do we do now? Ethan leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. We keep going. Sarah didn't respond. But she didn't argue either. That was enough. Later that night, Ethan woke to scraping. His body reacted before his mind. He sat up, machete in hand. Sarah was still asleep. The noise came from outside. Slow. Deliberate. Then, a whisper. Not a zombie. Something worse. Ethan stood, muscles tensed, and moved toward the broken door. A shadow flickered outside. Then, a voice. Thought I saw movement in here. Ethan's blood ran cold. Bandits. Another voice chuckled. Might be something useful inside. Ethan's grip tightened on his weapon. Sarah stirred behind him, blinking groggily. What? Ethan pressed a hand over her mouth, silencing her. She tensed, but then she heard them, too. Her eyes went wide. Ethan whispered, barely audible, stay quiet. The voices outside got closer. One of them laughed. Hiding won't help, little rats. We always find what we're looking for. Ethan's mind raced. They had two choices. Fight. Risk a loud battle, drawing zombies to their location. Run. But where? They had no idea what was waiting outside. Sarah trembled. Ethan could see it, the same look she'd had before Jamie was lost. She was ready to die. Ethan gritted his teeth. No. Not like this. Not now. Then, a plan formed. He leaned close to Sarah, whispering, when I say go, run. Her eyes widened, fear breaking through her grief. But no arguing. His voice was steel. You want to live? You run. She hesitated. Then, she nodded. Ethan turned toward the entrance. The bandits were almost inside now, shadows creeping through the cracks in the walls. He raised his machete. Then, with a deep breath, he charged. Ethan charged, his boots slamming against the rotting wooden floor. The first bandit barely had time to react. Ethan's machete sliced across his throat, spraying hot blood against the church's stone walls. The second man stumbled back, cursing. He's armed. Ethan didn't let him finish. He tackled the man, driving him into the shattered doorway. They hit the ground hard, rolling through the overgrown grass outside. Pain exploded in Ethan's ribs, but he didn't stop. He punched, again and again, until the man beneath him stopped moving. Then, click. Ethan froze. A third bandit stood a few feet away, gun raised. The man smirked. Nice try, hero. Ethan's heart pounded. He was out of time. Then, a scream. Sarah. The distraction was enough. Ethan lunged, grabbing the barrel of the gun just as it fired. The shot went wide, echoing through the empty ruins. Sarah stumbled backward inside the church, her eyes locked on the body of the first bandit, the one Ethan had killed. The sound of the gunshot still rang in the air. Ethan's stomach twisted. They weren't alone anymore. From the darkness of the forest, moans rose. The dead had heard. The bandit cursed, wrestling with Ethan for control of the gun. "You just killed us all, you idiot." Ethan didn't care. He forced the barrel up, then yanked the pistol hard. The bandit staggered, just enough. Ethan fired. The bullet ripped through the man's chest, sending him crashing onto the dirt. Silence. For a moment, Ethan just breathed. Then, a horrific shriek cut through the night. Ethan turned just in time to see them. Dozens. The dead poured from the trees, moving fast, drawn by the gunfire. Sarah stood in the doorway of the church, her face pale. She met Ethan's eyes. And for the first time since Jamie's death, she wanted to live. "Run," she screamed. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. The chase. Ethan and Sarah sprinted through the ruins, the dead crashing through the underbrush behind them. The forest wasn't safe anymore. Neither was the city. There was only one way left to go. The river. Ethan grabbed Sarah's wrist, dragging her forward. "We have to jump." She glanced at the edge of the steep slope ahead, her eyes wide. "Are you insane?" He didn't answer. The horde was too close. The only way out was down. Sarah clenched her jaw. Then, without another word, she ran. Together, they leapt over the edge. And plunged into the freezing river below. The aftermath. Ethan's lungs burned as he surfaced, gasping for air. The current dragged him, pulling him downstream. Sarah was beside him, coughing, struggling to stay afloat. The dead didn't follow. They couldn't. The river had saved them. They let the current carry them, exhaustion pressing against their limbs. By the time they crawled onto the riverbank, the night had begun to fade into a cold, gray dawn. Sarah collapsed onto the mud, shaking. Ethan lay beside her, staring at the sky. For the first time in what felt like forever. They had survived. Sarah turned her head, looking at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What now?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "We keep going." Sarah nodded. And for the first time since the world ended, she believed it. The end. Or a new beginning.